Before time had taken its first breath, before the mountains carried their crowns of snow, and before the oceans learned to whisper, there was stillness. It was not darkness nor light, but something softer, an eternal pause between two heartbeats of creation. In that stillness, the world waited, a cradle of elements without form, where warmth and cold, thunder and calm, drifted without boundary. From this ancient quiet, the world of Kanto was shaped, and within its skies, the first legends took wing. It is said that, in those early days, the sky was not a single realm but a meeting ground of restless forces. The winds had not yet learned restraint. The sun burned too brightly, and the cold that rose from the northern mountains spread without mercy. Balance was only a dream the earth longed for. From that yearning, from that unspoken wish of nature itself, came three beings, not born as creatures of flesh and bone, but as living fragments of the world's first breath. The first to stir was the spirit of frost. From the glaciers that slept beneath the northern cliffs, from the tears of frozen rain that clung to the earth since the dawn, came Articuno. Its wings spread like mirrors of crystal, each feather a shard of the purest winter. When it rose, silence followed, not the silence of emptiness, but the serene hush of snow descending upon untouched ground. Its flight cooled the fury of the newborn sun, and its presence taught the world the beauty of stillness. Where Articuno drifted, the air softened, and time itself seemed to slow, as if the universe paused to watch the grace of frost given form. But the stillness could not last. Beneath the calm that Articuno brought, deep within the clouds that rolled over the wild plains, another force began to awaken, a pulse, electric and impatient. The storm that had slumbered since the first spark of creation stirred once more, gathering the energy of every restless gust and every forgotten echo of thunder. From that storm, through a cry that split the horizon in two, Zapdos emerged. Its feathers carried the fire of lightning. Its wings glowed with the pulse of 1,000 storms. Where Articuno brought calm, Zapdos carried the restlessness of the heavens. It soared through the upper winds, weaving arcs of electricity that danced between the clouds like threads of living gold. Its flight gave voice to the skies, teaching the world that silence and thunder could share the same song. Then, when ice and storm had found their balance, when the skies trembled between calm and power, the heart of the earth began to burn. In the caverns beneath the mountains, magma whispered, dreaming of release. From those molten breaths, from the glow of the world's hidden furnace, Moltres rose. Its wings carried the fire of life itself, golden and eternal, each feather a spark of the sun reborn. When it took flight, the dawn grew brighter, the clouds parted, and warmth spread through the valleys that had known only frost and storm. The firebird did not seek to conquer the sky, but to complete it, to bring light where shadow had lingered, and to remind the world that life is born from both calm and chaos. Together they became the trinity of balance, ice, storm, and flame, the guardians of the elements, the first keepers of the sky. Articuno shaped the breath of winter, weaving the silence of snow. Zapdos ruled the storm, carrying thunder across the heavens. Moltres brought renewal, the endless flame that followed destruction. And thus, the world found rhythm. The seas began to know their tides, the winds their patterns, the seasons their turnings. What was once chaos became harmony, and the skies learned peace. For a time, their unity held strong. They did not speak, for words were not yet born. They moved as one, a silent accord that kept the balance of the world intact. When Articuno spread its wings, snow fell over the peaks. When Zapdos soared, lightning cracked through the clouds. And, when Moltres passed, the chill of winter melted into spring. Their presence became the hidden rhythm behind all seasons. Their flight, the unspoken pulse of time itself. Yet even in balance, there lingers the seed of discord. For balance demands vigilance, and time erodes even the purest harmony. The mortals who would one day walk the earth had not yet come to name these beings, but the world itself began to feel the tension of their power. The storm envied the stillness, the flame envied the cold. And in the deep quiet of the mountains, the first tremor of imbalance was born, a whisper carried by the wind, faint yet growing. It began in the farthest reaches of the northern sky, where the air was so thin that only the purest frost could survive. Articuno, guardian of silence, had withdrawn to the heights where even thunder could not reach. The serenity it cherished had grown deeper, colder, until even the warmth of sunlight struggled to touch the ice. Its wings beat slowly, spreading endless snow, and the world below began to sleep too deeply, caught in a winter without end. Zapdos felt it first, the world's pulse slowing, the hum of energy fading beneath the weight of frost. It descended from the thunderclouds, its eyes burning with light, its wings crackling with unease. When it soared over the frozen lands, its storm broke the silence with a roar that echoed across the horizon. But even the storm could not awaken the sleeping world. The frost had become too strong, too quiet, too perfect. And so, Moltres rose once more from its volcanic rest, the fire within its heart stirring with concern. It spread its wings and scattered embers into the sky, lighting the air with a soft, golden glow. The warmth reached the edges of Articuno's domain, melting the edges of the ice. But as the fire rose, the storm followed, drawn by both curiosity and conflict. What had once been balance began to tremble. For each force, though pure, could not exist without testing the other. The skies grew heavy with energy. Lightning danced upon falling snow, flame glimmered upon frost, and from this convergence came the first storm of creation, a storm that did not destroy, but defined. It was a storm of understanding, a meeting of opposites, where each element saw itself reflected in the others. The earth shuddered beneath the power of their union, and the ocean rose in awe. It was said that from that moment onward, the world gained its first true equilibrium, a harmony not born of stillness, but of eternal movement. As the centuries passed, the memory of that first storm became the essence of legend. The skies retained the echo of their wings, the mountains, the chill of their breath, the volcanoes, the warmth of their flame. Though they withdrew to the hidden corners of the world, Articuno to the frozen peaks, Zapdos to the thunderclouds, Moltres to the molten heart of the earth, their presence lingered. Every flake of snow, every flash of lightning, every flicker of fire carried their spirit. When humankind finally came to be, they looked to the skies and saw traces of this ancient dance. They did not know their names, yet they felt their power. They built myths around the changes of weather, calling the storm a sign of wrath, the frost a sign of purity, and the fire a promise of renewal. Over generations, the stories took shape. 3 wings, 3 lights, 3 eternal guardians. Articuno became the herald of calm and protection, said to appear to lost travelers in the snow. Zapdos became the spirit of thunder and might, called upon by those who sought courage in chaos. Moltres became the bearer of rebirth, the eternal flame that guided the lost toward dawn. Thus the world of Pokémon inherited not mere creatures, but echoes of creation itself. They were not gods, but they were the closest the sky could ever come to remembering its own beginning. Each one existed alone, yet never truly apart, bound by a force older than the stars, that glimmered above their flight. And so when night falls and the winds grow quiet, the balance they once forged still breathes in every corner of the world. The frost whispers their names across frozen fields. Thunder hums their power through distant storms, and the gentle warmth of fire carries their promise through the dark. Even now, in the silence of sleep, if one listens closely enough, they might still hear the slow beat of wings, the rhythm of a legend older than time itself, still keeping the world at peace between each breath of eternity. There came an age when silence no longer ruled the mountains, and the sky no longer belonged only to the 3. The world had grown older, and in its quiet growth, new sounds began to echo. The steps of creatures walking the land, the murmur of waters tracing their paths to the sea, the first low hum of mortal life awakening beneath the vast sky that had once been theirs alone. The balance that Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres had forged held still, yet its edges trembled like a candle in the breath of dawn. For in every age, even in peace, the winds gather. They do not rush nor rage at once. They whisper first, curling around the unseen corners of the world, as if testing its stillness. These were the gathering winds, the unseen prelude to change, carried softly across the horizon like a thought that refuses to rest. Far above the mortal plains, the three watched in their own silent ways. Articuno lingered over the crowns of frozen mountains, its feathers reflecting the dim blue light of the eternal north. Around it, ice crystals drifted, each one a mirror to an ancient memory. It felt the shift before any other, a tremor beneath the stillness, a vibration too subtle for thunder, too faint for flame. The silence it guarded began to thin. Zapdos, ever bound to the movement of air, heard the whisper through the clouds. It was not the crack of lightning, nor the voice of storm. It was something smaller, weaker, yet infinitely alive. The crackle of the first human fires reached even the skies, and Zapdos, curious, followed the trails of smoke rising from the earth below. There, in the dim light of evening, it saw creatures with eyes that shone like stars reflected in the mud, gathering warmth around their fragile flames. They were the first to challenge the darkness without wings, the first to rise and name the world they feared. Moltres, too, felt this new presence. Deep within the veins of the earth, where it slept wrapped in a cocoon of molten glow, it sensed warmth not of its own making. The fires of humankind flickered like its own feathers, though smaller, gentler, an imitation born from admiration, or perhaps from instinct. The great firebird watched through the rippling air of its volcanic refuge, and for the first time since creation, it understood that the world had changed. The gift of flame had found new hands. For many generations, the three remained distant, unseen, content to watch from their domains. Yet the growing harmony of the world began to bend under its own weight. The mortals who had learned to command fire, to seek shelter from cold, and to read the signs of storms, began to wonder if there were powers greater still. They felt the frost that fell from the north and whispered that a spirit of ice must dwell beyond the clouds. They saw the flash of lightning that tore through the sky and believed it was the anger of a storm-born god. They watched the sun set behind the volcanic ridges and imagined a winged flame carrying the day into the next dawn. What had been mere balance became myth, and with myth came reverence. In the oldest caves of the mountains, the first carvings appeared, crude, made from stone and soot, yet shaped with awe. A single figure with 3 wings, each one reaching toward a different horizon. One wing frozen, one alight, one bound by storm. The people who drew it did not understand the true breadth of what they depicted. Yet they felt it, that somewhere above, unseen and eternal, something vast watched over them. The gathering winds grew stronger. The elements began to move again, as if stirred by the mortal imagination itself. Each prayer whispered by the firelight, each song offered to the thunder, each cry beneath the snow, all reached the skies, echoing across the unseen boundaries that bound the three together. Articuno was the first to respond. The songs of the north called it forth. The mortals of the tundra, wandering through blizzards, raised their voices in plea for safe passage, and the bird of ice answered. It glided through the mist, unseen but felt, its wings calming the blinding white. Frost softened, snow stilled, and those who survived the storm told stories of a guardian cloaked in sapphire light, whose shadow fell like mercy upon the lost. Word spread south, carried by travelers who followed the rivers that melted from the ice. By the time their tales reached the valleys, Zapdos had already stirred. The mortals there knew the voice of thunder and feared it. They prayed to the sky for the storm to pass, for crops not to be burned by lightning or drowned by rain. And the storm heard them. Zapdos flew lower than it ever had before, descending through clouds dark as night. Its wings brushed the air, splitting the storm apart. The lightning dimmed, the winds quieted, and in the hush that followed, the people felt awe rather than fear. They built shrines upon high cliffs, crowned with metal rods that reached toward the heavens, hoping the storm would strike there first, not to destroy, but to show that the thunder listened. And in the brief flash of lightning that touched their shrines, they saw divinity made visible, fleeting and magnificent. Meanwhile, far to the west, where the land trembled with heat, the followers of the flame built their homes near rivers of molten stone. They knew fire both as a giver and taker of life. When their fields burned, they wept. When their forges glowed, they rejoiced. To them, Moltres became not a destroyer, but a promise, the flame that consumes, yes, but also the flame that begins again. When ash fell upon the earth, new growth followed. When the sun seemed too distant, a red light appeared on the horizon, reminding them that warmth would always return. And so it was that the mortals, through their stories, tied the three together once more. They did not know it, but their worship rekindled the bond that time had dimmed. The songs of frost, the prayers of thunder, the dances of fire, each became a note in the forgotten harmony of creation. The winds gathered, carrying their faith across mountains and seas, uniting voices that had never met. But harmony invites motion, and motion invites change. The balance, delicate as the shimmer of heat upon snow, began to tilt again. For where there is reverence, there can also be ambition. Some among the mortals began to wonder whether these beings were guardians or masters. They saw the frost that preserved and the flame that consumed, and in their curiosity, they began to seek them, to call them not as deities to be thanked, but as forces to be harnessed. They climbed the frozen peaks, leaving offerings of crystal and bone, hoping Articuno would grant them control over the cold. They raised towers upon cliffs, hung with metal that sang with each strike of lightning, believing they could summon Zapdos itself. They lit fires in the deepest caverns, chanting to draw Moltres from its molten sleep. And the winds, ever listening, began to carry not only songs of reverence, but echoes of desire. For a while, the three remained still. They watched as mortals reached higher, louder, braver. But their patience was the patience of eternity. And even eternity has limits. The skies darkened one final evening, not in rage, but in sorrow. From the north came the first snow of the new age, soft and unending. From the west came lightning that touched the horizon in silence. From the heart of the earth rose a glow so deep it turned night into burning gold. The mortals who saw it did not flee. They fell to their knees, knowing instinctively that they had called forth what they could never contain. The three rose together once more. The frostbird, the stormbearer, and the firewing met above the world for the first time since its birth. They circled the earth in solemn grace, their movements neither wrathful nor kind, but inevitable. From their wings spread wind and flame and snow, a storm that encircled all creation. It was not punishment, but remembrance. The winds that had gathered carried away the echoes of mortal pride, leaving behind only stillness, the same stillness from which they had once been born. When dawn came, the shrines were empty, the fires cold, the peaks silent. But in that silence, peace returned. The people who survived spoke softly of what they had seen, and vowed to remember the balance they had disturbed. The skies cleared once more, and the three withdrew again to their sacred realms. Articuno returned to its frozen towers, resting upon glaciers untouched by the sun. Zapdos vanished into the highest clouds, where thunder dreams. Moltres descended into the glowing heart of the mountains, where fire sleeps in patience. The harmony was restored, fragile, beautiful, eternal. But the winds never forget. They hold memory like the sea holds light, never still, never gone. The gathering winds that once whispered of change continued to circle the world, waiting, listening, knowing that every balance is only borrowed, never owned. And somewhere, high above the horizon, three shadows crossed paths again. Wings of frost, wings of storm, wings of flame, moving together in silence, guardians once more of the fragile breath between peace and awakening. Long after the great storm faded, peace lay over the world like a blanket of silver mist. The mortals rebuilt their quiet lives in the valleys and plains, their songs softer now, their hearts reverent toward the unseen skies. The shrines they once carved became silent monuments, half buried beneath snow and moss, their stories fading into myth. Seasons resumed their patient turning. The gentle bloom of spring, the slow blaze of summer, the sigh of autumn's wind, and the hushed breath of winter. But deep within the northern reaches, where the sun's warmth could barely touch, stillness grew too heavy. There, amid endless fields of white and frozen stone, something ancient began to stir again. The glaciers of the far north were the oldest part of the earth, their roots reaching deep into the memory of creation. They held within them the quiet of the beginning, the same silence that had cradled Articuno's birth. For ages uncounted, the frostbird had rested among these frozen spires, its wings folded like fragments of moonlight, its breath slower than the turning of the stars. It was at peace, yet even peace can tremble under the weight of eternity. The whisper began softly, like a sigh beneath the ice. It was not a voice, but a vibration, a faint movement within the frozen depths, as though the glacier itself remembered something it wished to tell. Articuno heard it in the stillness, a sound that did not belong to snow or wind. It lingered between thoughts, an echo of something lost. The frostbird tilted its head, and the air around it shimmered faintly with pale light. The whisper grew, winding through caverns of frozen blue. It spoke of pressure, of weight, of something beneath that wished to rise. The frost that had once preserved the world now seemed to carry secrets, and those secrets pressed upward like the breath of a buried storm. For the first time since the balance had been restored, Articuno felt uncertainty. The world it knew was defined by stillness, a silence so complete it could soothe the fiercest gale. But this sound, it was alive. It pulsed through the veins of ice like a heartbeat, too slow to be mortal, too steady to be ignored. From its perch upon a crystalline ridge, Articuno spread its wings. Shards of frost shimmered into the air, glinting like glass in the dim light. The wind did not rise. Instead, it fell away, as though bowing to the movement of the guardian. With a single slow motion, the frostbird took flight. Its wings beat once, twice, each motion quiet but powerful enough to ripple through the frozen landscape. The snow stirred beneath its passage, drifting into spirals that caught faint traces of blue light. Articuno ascended higher, seeking the heart of the whisper. The journey took it across the endless expanse of white. Below, the land was a map of silence, ridges carved by forgotten winds, valleys shaped by the weight of centuries. Above, the sky was a pale mirror, empty and eternal. Only the faint hum beneath the ice guided it, leading toward the oldest glacier in the world, a place even the storms feared to tread. There, at the crown of the northern realm, the ice met the heavens. The mountain beneath was buried under millennia of snow, and its peak shone with a light that was not sunlight but memory. Articuno descended, its wings brushing the frozen air with reverence. It landed upon the glacier's surface, and the whisper ceased. For a long time, there was only silence again, the kind that stretches beyond sound, the kind that feels like eternity breathing. But then, from deep within the ice, a low resonance emerged, steady and slow. It was the voice of the earth itself, speaking not in words, but in vibration. The frost cracked faintly beneath Articuno's talons, and a faint glow spread outward through the ice, a deep, soft blue, pulsing like the beat of a distant star. The bird of winter watched, its eyes calm and unblinking. It understood that this was no threat, it was remembrance. The glacier was not breaking, it was waking. Long ago, when the world was first formed, every element had found its resting place. Flame within the earth, storm within the sky, frost within the mountains. But time, relentless and patient, had begun to shift those places. The earth turned, the seasons moved, and the harmony that once seemed eternal began to stretch thin. The whisper beneath the ice was the first sign, a reminder that even balance breathes and every breath must end. Articuno closed its wings, settling upon the surface of the glacier. Its feathers caught the glow rising from below, casting prisms of light across the frozen cliffs. It listened, not with its ears, but with the essence that had once helped form the world. Within that glow, It felt faint traces of warmth, a contradiction that unsettled the frost. Warmth beneath the ice, life within the cold. Somewhere deep below, molten rock stirred. Not enough to break through, but enough to pulse. The heart of the earth was moving again. And in that movement, Articuno sensed the distant breath of Moltres. Faint, but present, as though the flamebird's rest had begun to tremble. Far above, thunder rolled across the horizon, distant, hesitant, almost questioning. Zapdos, too, had heard something, and thus the silence was broken. Not by battle, not by rage, but by awakening. Articuno spread its wings once more. Snow lifted from the cliffs in slow spirals, caught in the radiance of its light. The frostbird rose into the pale sky, carrying with it the whisper it had found, a message meant for the others. Across the expanse of the world, the wind began to shift. Clouds gathered where there had been none. Lightning flickered at the edges of storms yet unborn. Deep within the volcanic valleys, embers stirred, tiny at first, then brighter, as though breathing in unison with the wind. The balance had begun to move again. To the mortals below, it was imperceptible. They saw only small changes, winters that lingered longer than before, storms that arrived earlier, nights that seemed to hold the sun at bay. The elders whispered that the guardians were restless, that the winds of creation were turning once more. But to the three themselves, it was more than change. It was memory returning. The ancient rhythm that had bound them since the dawn of the world had begun to pulse again, faint but inevitable. It was not warning, nor wrath. It was a call. Articuno flew southward, its feathers leaving trails of glimmering frost in the air. Beneath its flight, the rivers slowed, the forests hushed, the world listening. It moved with the grace of time itself, carrying the silent echo of the glacier's awakening. Far to the west, in the heart of the volcanic ridges, the first tremors reached Moltres. In its sleep, the firebird shifted. Flames rippled along its wings, faint but growing. Its dreams were of light and shadow, of an age when it had flown beside frost and thunder in perfect rhythm. It remembered, and in remembering, it began to wake. And in the skies above the central plains, Zapdos stirred among the clouds. The storm that had lain dormant began to hum, a single spark traveling across its feathers. The sky darkened, though no rain fell, and the air filled with a charge that made even the mountains shiver. The storm bird opened its eyes, and in the golden flash of lightning reflected there, it saw the movement of the world's balance, slow, delicate, but real. The three had not spoken in eons. They had not needed to. But across the vast spaces between their domains, they felt one another again. The frostbird, the stormbearer, the flamewing, bound not by words, but by the shared heartbeat of the planet itself. The whisper beneath the ice had become the whisper of the world. Night fell gently over the north. The stars glittered faintly, reflected in the frozen peaks like scattered diamonds. Articuno landed once more upon its perch, folding its wings around its body like a cloak of crystal. Its eyes lingered on the horizon, where faint clouds glowed with the restless light of distant lightning. Somewhere beyond, a flicker of red danced upon the edge of the earth, fire stirring within darkness. The world was shifting again. The winds carried promise and warning alike. Yet for now, the balance held, fragile, precious, and alive. The whisper had been heard, and in the stillness that followed, the frostbird closed its eyes, letting snow fall softly upon its wings, as if the sky itself sought comfort in its presence. The ancient glacier pulsed faintly beneath it, the glow fading, but not gone. The world slept once more, though lighter, as though listening in its dreams for what would come next. Above the silence, a single snowflake drifted down, its crystalline edges catching starlight as it descended through the calm air. When it touched the surface of the glacier, it melted instantly, a tiny droplet, gone in an instant, yet marking the quiet beginning of change. And so, from that single drop the story continued, the patient unfolding of destiny, hidden beneath layers of ice and time. The breath of frost had stirred, and the harmony of the skies would soon awaken in full. The world slept beneath an endless gray, unaware of the storm that had begun to form within its breath. Winds shifted quietly over mountains and plains, not in violence, but in purpose. The balance that had lain dormant since the first dawn stirred once more, subtle yet undeniable. The frost had whispered, the flame had trembled, and now it was the sky's turn to awaken. High above the middle lands, where the air thins and the clouds build like mountains of mist, a pulse flickered in the quiet. It began as a single spark, lost among the endless expanse of vapor, then another, and another, until the stillness shimmered faintly with threads of living light. The sky was remembering. From that remembrance, thunder found its voice again. It was not the roar of anger, nor the fury of chaos. It was the sound of something vast, stretching after a long sleep, reclaiming its power, one heartbeat at a time. At the center of the storm, where the clouds gathered into a spiraling crown, Zapdos opened its eyes. For an instant, the sky itself seemed to split with gold. Its feathers glowed faintly, charged with energy that hummed through the air like the distant song of creation. Lightning rippled along the edges of its wings, soft at first, then growing, alive and aware. It rose slowly, not with haste, but with a deliberate, patient grace. A being ancient enough to know that true power moves not with speed, but with certainty. The storm bird ascended through its own clouds, its form half hidden by the veil of vapor, its shadow vast and formless, stretching across the horizon. Every beat of its wings carried a tremor through the air. The clouds thickened around it, swirling like tides drawn toward a single point. From far below, the mortals who lived in the valleys saw the heavens darken, not in threat, but in awe. They felt the electricity in the air before they heard the sound. The winds shifted, the air grew still, and then, softly, thunder rolled. To them, it was merely a storm. To the world, it was remembrance. Zapdos hovered within the heart of its domain, the sky bending to its will. It had always been the embodiment of motion, of the energy that connects all things, the flash between cause and consequence, the invisible thread between heaven and earth. But in its long rest, the air had grown complacent. The balance it had helped shape had become heavy with silence, and silence, left unchecked, invites stagnation. Now, the storm would breathe again. From its wings flowed streams of pure electricity, each thread branching and fading before it touched the ground. The air shimmered with ozone and power, and the scent of rain, though no drop had yet fallen, filled the world below. The sky glowed faintly, golden and alive. The thunderbird stretched its wings fully, and for the first time in ages, it flew. Its motion was silent at first, its speed blurring the edges of the clouds. The pressure of its flight bent the wind around it, shaping tunnels of invisible force that rippled outward for miles. Then, as it ascended higher, the air itself responded. Lightning burst across the sky, not as a weapon, but as a declaration, a reminder that even silence must one day yield to sound. Below, the forest shuddered under the weight of static energy. Rivers quivered with reflected light. Even the mountains, those ancient pillars of the world, seemed to hum faintly, resonating with the deep frequency of the awakening storm. Yet within this grandeur there was no wrath, only balance seeking motion. Zapdos flew through the thickening clouds, its wings painting streaks of gold and white across the gray. It was both artist and instrument, its flight the music of thunder, its light the brushstroke of renewal. Every pulse of electricity that left its body became part of the atmosphere, recharging the air, stirring the stagnant winds of the world below. It remembered the frostbird, the silent keeper of calm, and the firebird, the eternal bearer of warmth. It felt their movements in the fabric of the wind, the chill whisper from the north, the subtle warmth that shimmered through the clouds. They were awake, though distant, and their presence called to it like ancient memory. Once, long ago, their unity had kept the world in perfect rhythm. Now that rhythm trembled once more, not in collapse, but in renewal. As Zapdos rose above the highest clouds, The first true storm in centuries took form. It gathered slowly, spiraling in graceful patience, stretching from horizon to horizon. The sunlight dimmed, replaced by the soft glow of lightning weaving through layers of mist. It was a storm not meant to destroy, but to cleanse, to remind the earth that movement is life, and stillness too long unbroken invites decay. From its vantage point above the world, the Thunderbird looked down upon the great expanse of creation. Mountains lay cloaked in snow to the north, seas shimmered with restless waves to the east, and to the west, faint embers flickered, the resting place of Moltres, still half dreaming. Zapdos tilted its wings and glided through the upper atmosphere, trailing arcs of light behind it like celestial veins. Each movement carried precision, control, the perfection of power without cruelty. It was the conductor of nature's grand symphony, directing the winds, awakening the clouds, coaxing rain into the parched corners of the earth. Lightning danced playfully around its wings, illuminating its golden plumage in pulses of light. The sound of thunder followed not as noise, but as rhythm, slow, steady, like the heartbeat of the sky itself. In its flight, the bird of storm began to sense something more, a resonance that did not belong solely to wind or cloud. It came from deep beneath, a subtle answering pulse that vibrated through the bones of the world. The whisper that had begun beneath the ice had reached even here, transformed into a current that hummed through every storm, every gust, every spark. The Thunderbird understood. The earth was speaking again. The world itself, once still, was awakening in all its parts, frost, flame, and storm, in unison. As if to affirm this truth, a gust of cold air rose from the north, sweeping through the layers of cloud. It carried the faint shimmer of ice, the unmistakable presence of Articuno. Zapdos felt it, not as challenge, but as acknowledgement. And in the same moment, from the far horizon, a distant warmth stirred, a pulse of red light that flared for an instant, then faded into the horizon. Moltres too was listening. For the first time since the dawn, the three were aware of one another again, not in sight, but in essence. The winds shifted across the world. Clouds formed paths where none had existed. The seas darkened with reflection. The sky, the earth, and the fire beneath began to hum in shared anticipation. And yet, beneath this awakening beauty, there lingered unease, the faint imbalance that always follows creation. For as the storm grew, it reached the edges of the frostbird's domain, and where warmth met cold, the air trembled. Tiny fractures formed in the rhythm of the sky, small yet meaningful, like ripples on a still lake before the fall of rain. Zapdos descended slowly, its golden eyes tracing the edge of its storm. It hovered above the clouds, listening. The wind spoke of movement, of life, but also of tension. It could feel the frost stiffening in the north, the fire rising in the west. The harmony was changing shape. This was not the end of balance, but its transformation. Below, the mortals looked up in wonder. They had seen storms before, but none so vast, none so gentle in its power. The lightning came not as destruction, but as light, illuminating rivers, glinting upon stone temples, tracing silver lines across the seas. They watched and whispered prayers, their hearts steady, sensing that something divine moved above them. The rain began softly, droplets warm from the energy of the storm, falling like blessings. The rivers swelled, the forests drank deeply, and the fields glowed with new life. Zapdos flew above it all, silent, solemn, aware that even renewal carries its own weight. Far beyond the storm's edge, in the frozen north, Articuno raised its head. Frost glimmered upon its feathers as it sensed the movement of its old kin. In the west, the fires beneath the mountains brightened, and Moltres stirred fully, stretching wings that blazed like dawn. The stormbird's awakening had become a summons. The world's rhythm was gathering, slow, grand, unstoppable. Each element was answering, each guardian returning to the ancient song of creation. And as thunder rolled one final time across the vast horizon, Zapdos ascended once more into the uppermost reaches of the sky. There, suspended between heaven and void, it folded its wings and waited. Lightning flickered softly around it, forming a halo of silent gold. The air stilled. The storm paused, poised between calm and fury, peace and movement. The Thunderbird closed its eyes, its presence pulsing faintly across the clouds. Below, the rain ceased. Above, the stars returned, their light trembling through the thinning veil of cloud. The storm had awakened, and through it, the world had remembered how to breathe. But somewhere, far below the trembling skies, deep within the earth, a flicker of crimson light burned, slow, patient, inevitable. The Firebird was waking, and with its awakening, the world's balance would be tested once more. The thunder slept again, but the sky was no longer still. Every gust of wind now carried memory. Every spark was a promise. And in that promise, the legend moved forward, toward fire, toward flame, toward the next turning of the eternal cycle. The world had grown accustomed to rhythm, to the quiet pulse of frost and storm. Yet beneath the mountains, within chambers older than memory, a light began to stir, faint, persistent, and warm. It was the heartbeat of fire long asleep, the ember of life that had waited through centuries, patiently gathering strength until the time came to rise again. From the molten veins of the deepest volcano, Moltres began to awaken. Its eyes opened, glowing like twin suns refracted through crystal. The warmth of its breath spread through the rocky chamber, turning stone to gentle heat and shadows into flickering gold. Unlike the tempest of Zapdos or the hush of Articuno, the Firebird's rise was gentle yet undeniable, a slow, deliberate unveiling of energy that reached even the edges of the world. Moltres stretched its wings within the volcanic heart, each feather a flame shaped from the sun's first light. They glimmered, gold and crimson, reflecting in the molten pools below. It lifted itself from the earthen cradle, and as it ascended, the heat radiated outward, touching the frozen plains to the north, the storm-laden clouds above, and the forests that lay in quiet anticipation. The awakening of fire was never silent. Though no roar escaped, the world felt its arrival. Ice softened at the mountain's edge. Rivers glimmered as if catching sparks from the air, and the wind carried faint whispers of heat through distant valleys. Even Zapdos, high in the gathering storm, felt a pulse of warmth threading through the cold currents, and Articuno, above the endless snowfields, sensed a shift in the chill. Moltres emerged fully from the volcanic chasm, its wings spanning the sky, casting light upon the earth that had slumbered under the shadow of frost and storm. The air shimmered with warmth, thickening with the essence of flame. Its movement was slow, almost meditative, yet every motion carried power enough to awaken even the most hidden corners of the world. The three, guardians, long separated by domain, were now aware in full measure of one another's presence. Articuno's frost met the distant warmth, Zapdos' storm vibrated through the currents, and Moltres' fire intertwined with both. Their unity was not complete, but it was returning, a delicate thread woven from the elements themselves. The Firebird's flight traced arcs of red and gold across the western horizon. Lava flowed not as destruction, but as guidance, shaping rivers and valleys that would host life. Ash drifted, not to choke, but to fertilize, returning old decay into the soil. The world below breathed in rhythm with Moltres, sensing the gentle sweep of its wings through the air, a warmth that whispered of renewal. Mortals watched the skies, unable to name what moved above them. They saw the shimmer of heat upon distant peaks, the golden reflection in pools and lakes, the glow that painted the clouds at dawn. They spoke of miracles, of fire that carried neither wrath nor greed, only life. They built fires in quiet reverence, knowing instinctively that some power watched, and that in watching, the world itself would flourish. The Firebird moved slowly, deliberately, circling the lands where ice lingered and storms trembled. Frost softened beneath its gaze, the storm's energy softened in its wake, and in that union, the three began to sense the fragile harmony of balance returning. Moltres was not merely flame, it was memory made motion. Every ember in its wings carried the story of creation. Every pulse of heat echoed the long, patient rhythm of time. It rose higher, until the horizon stretched beyond vision, and the land below became a tapestry of light and shadow, storm and frost, fire and renewal. There, in the highest air, Moltres paused, its wings unfolding slowly like the opening of a golden flower. Lightning from Zapdos cracked faintly through the clouds, mingling with the heat and fire. Frost from Articuno shimmered like diamonds upon the prize. Drifting snow, softened by the touch of warmth, a cycle once dormant was reawakening. The world, long at peace, had now learned again the rhythm of vigilance. Not for conquest, not for domination, but for the patient reminder that life in all its forms depends on movement, change, and the delicate balance of opposites. Moltres' flight continued westward, and the lands that had lain dormant now shimmered with possibility. Forests breathed more deeply, rivers glimmered with life, and even the mountains seemed to hum with the heat of long-buried fire. The world was waking, not with noise, but with the subtle pulse of a heart remembering itself. And somewhere above the newly lit valleys, Zapdos wheeled through the sky, its storm now tempered by the warmth below. Articuno drifted in silence across northern glaciers, watching with patient eyes as Frost adapted to the rising fire. Together, the three guardians began to move as one again, though each retained the essence of its own element. Fire, storm, and ice, three forces, bound not by dominance, but by purpose. The mortals, still unaware of the full depth of this awakening, felt only the beauty. They saw storms tempered by warmth, snow softened by light, and the sky painted in brilliant arcs of color. They understood instinctively that these were signs of something eternal, guardians unseen but palpably present, guiding the rhythms of the world. Moltres descended finally to the peaks of its volcanic home, wings folded in quiet contemplation. It breathed deeply, and the heat radiated outward, settling into the earth, nurturing, warming, and reminding all that creation is not merely born, it is maintained. The firebird closed its eyes and pulsed once, faint and steady. The rhythm traveled outward, threading through clouds, rivers, mountains, and ice. Zapdos stirred in the storm above. Articuno shifted in the frozen north. For the first time since the beginning, all three felt fully aware of one another's presence, each a part of the whole yet distinct, a delicate trio whose unity defined the world. And in that awareness, the legend of the legendary birds deepened. The firebird had risen, the storm had awakened, the frost had whispered, and the world, in its slow, eternal breath, remembered the song of creation. Night fell across the lands, soft and deep. Stars reflected faintly upon melted snow, and rivers warmed by distant flame. Somewhere, high above, the three guardians moved in silence, each carrying the essence of the world within their wings. Frost, storm, and fire, reborn, reawakened, and ever vigilant. And thus the cycle continued, patient, eternal, and profoundly beautiful. The world had breathed for countless days beneath the wings of fire, storm, and frost. Moltres had risen fully from the molten heart of the earth. Zapdos ruled the energized skies, and Articuno's silent vigilance stretched across the frozen north. Yet, even in harmony, subtle threads of imbalance persisted, as if the earth itself tested the readiness of the guardians to maintain its fragile rhythm. From high above the central plains, Zapdos traced arcs of lightning across gathering clouds. Its presence pulsed through the currents of air, threading warmth and cold together in measured cadence. Beneath, rivers and forests responded with a quiet, almost imperceptible sway, trees bending gently, water shimmering with the reflection of unseen energy. The stormbird's every motion carried more than force. It carried the echo of balance, a reminder to the world that even the elements themselves are bound by invisible accord. To the north, Articuno drifted across icy peaks, wings folded against the chill. The frostbird's breath spread like a slow exhalation over glaciers and frozen valleys, smoothing the jagged edges of snow and ice. Its presence reminded the world of patience, of restraint, of the quiet persistence that shapes existence more subtly than the fury of fire or storm. Crystals formed and fell, shifting with deliberate grace, like frozen notes in a symphony whose melody could only be heard in stillness. Far to the west, Moltres moved above volcanic ridges, wings trailing embers that glimmered in the twilight. Lava glowed faintly in the deep fissures of mountains, forests inhaled warmth, and dormant lands quivered with life. Its movement was measured, deliberate, a pulse that reminded even the strongest frost and the fiercest storm that creation thrives not through dominance, but through collaboration. Together, though apart, they shape the world like silent conductors. Each force carried its own rhythm, yet their harmonies intertwined. The world, below, responded, unconsciously, with signs of this renewed order. Snow softened at the edges of rivers where fire had touched the land. Lightning sparked through clouds softened by cold, and embers glimmered in places where the storm dared to linger. It was in this subtle interaction that the first true echoes of balance began to emerge. Mortals walked through forests, feeling the pulse of the air change with each gust of wind, each breath of frost, each brush of heat. Their crops flourished with a measured rain, their fires burned more predictably, their winter passed with gentle calm. They began to speak of a rhythm that moved beyond observation, an unspoken guidance, an invisible hand shaping not by force, but by presence. The guardians themselves were aware of one another, though not in sight. Their senses, attuned to the ancient currents of the world, felt each subtle shift. Zapdos could sense the soft hum of frost upon distant mountains, a deliberate counterpoint to its own wild energy. Articuno felt warmth rising in molten fissures, a gentle reminder that ice alone cannot sustain life. Moltres perceived the subtle charge in the clouds above, a sign that even fire must dance with air to maintain equilibrium. And as the three moved, the first tentative harmony of creation began to sing. From the frozen north, a small snowstorm drifted south, curling around the jagged peaks with delicate care. The snow softened, reflecting the golden glow of Moltres' distant flight. Zapdos' storm current swept across the highlands, dispersing frost in careful measure, leaving patterns of snow and lightning in rhythm with the land below. The dance was slow, deliberate, like the first lines of a song remembered after centuries. Beneath, the forests whispered to one another in the language of leaves and roots, feeling the pulse of the guardians above. Water trickled in rivers and streams, carrying not just reflection, but the memory of motion, the faint echo of wings, feathers, and energy imprinted upon the liquid world. Animals moved more gently, sensing the invisible watch over their lives. Every step, every breath, every shadow felt guided by forces larger than themselves. The mortals, though unaware of the guardian's precise influence, began to honor these movements. They left offerings at shrines in the mountains and valleys, placed small fires where embers might rise, and walked carefully through the drifting snow, speaking words of thanks. They were beginning to understand instinctively that the world had its own rhythm, and that they, too, were part of its delicate dance. It was not perfection, for balance is never absolute. Articuno's frost lingered longer in some places than intended, Zapdos' storm gathered unpredictably over distant plains, and Moltres' fire flared brighter than expected in newly awakened lands. These imperfections, however, were part of the pattern. They reminded the Guardians that balance is alive, not a static decree, but a dialogue between forces, each asserting its presence while yielding to the whole. Through this dialogue, the first true echo of harmony emerged. The three legendary birds moved as one across vast expanses, their motions separate, yet intertwined. From high above, the world below became a tapestry of contrasts, frost, flame, and storm each touching the earth in turn, leaving traces of their essence while making space for the others. The night sky watched silently. Stars shimmered faintly, reflections of the Guardians' flight-tracing patterns that mirrored the rhythms of the world beneath. Clouds gathered in soft spirals, carrying hints of frost and ember, whispers of electricity and warmth. The world breathed, measured and slow, alive with the pulse of something ancient yet eternal. Moltres glided westward across volcanic ridges, flames trailing like ink upon the sky, and felt the faint hum of Zapdos' storm wings in the currents above. Articuno's, Breath cooled the northern peaks, and the frostbird sensed the gentle warmth below, adjusting its rhythm to maintain subtle harmony. They were no longer isolated forces, no longer solitary guardians of domain. Their movements were now a symphony, each one lending voice and motion to the others, and the echoes spread. Mountains hummed, rivers glimmered, forests swayed. Every creature, from the smallest insect to the largest predator, felt the rhythm in its pulse, however faint. Even the winds, free and untamed, bent their course to the invisible currents of balance. The mortals slept beneath these skies, unaware of the intricate dance above them. Yet in their dreams, they sensed something larger, a presence that spoke not through words, but through the gentle guidance of life itself. Their hearts carried the quiet beat of harmony, their minds the faint echo of the guardian's flight. In this way, the world remembered the lessons of the past. Frost could temper fire. Storm could awaken frost. Fire could guide storm. Each force respected the others, and in that respect, the world itself thrived. The echoes of balance were not a single note, but a song, slow and unbroken, traveling through the mountains, plains, and seas. It was a song that would persist through centuries, guiding life, shaping land, and whispering to all who would listen. And so the three legendary birds continued their watch, moving in silent accord across the breadth of the world. Their presence was subtle yet undeniable, their power measured yet infinite. Frost, storm, and fire, each distinct, each necessary, each carrying the legacy of creation within its wings. And beneath their silent guardianship, the world breathed in harmony once more. For centuries, the world had moved in quiet rhythm. Frost, storm, and fire flowed together in harmony, guiding the lands with subtle influence. Rivers followed their courses. Forests breathed with measured life. Mountains held the seasons upon their shoulders, and mortals slept beneath skies tempered by unseen wings. The legendary birds had become the invisible heartbeat of the world, each pulse carefully attuned to the others. Yet even in eternity, nothing remains untouched by change. From the edges of civilization, where curiosity and ambition quietly stirred, the first shadows of discord began to form. Mortals, once reverent, now sought to understand the forces that governed the world. They studied storms and fires, the drift of snow and frost, and whispered in hushed tones about the beings who must surely guide them. Some sought only knowledge, others sought to command, to draw the power of fire, storm, and ice into their own hands. The world felt this subtle shift. Even the softest ambitions carry weight upon the earth, and the guardians sensed it. Articuno, drifting across its northern glaciers, felt the frost stir in unfamiliar patterns. Snowflakes fell where they should not, small and irregular, a whisper of imbalance. Zapdos, high in the storm-laden clouds, sensed currents twisted against their natural flow, subtle charges in the air that spoke of mortal interference. Moltres, resting within molten depths, felt embers flare unexpectedly, their warmth uneven, hinting at a curiosity reaching too close to what was sacred. These were not threats yet, but signs. Shadows of discord moving quietly through the fabric of the world. From northern peaks to southern valleys, whispers of the legendary birds spread among mortals. They carved statues and drew symbols of the three, not merely as figures of reverence, but as goals to approach, study, or possess. In some places they built altars of stone and metal, attempting to call the birds closer, to draw their presence down into human hands. Though done with care and ritual, these acts carried an unintended consequence. Even small desires echoed into the skies, stirring the delicate currents of frost, storm, and fire. Articuno, guardian of ice and stillness, sensed the first tremor. The snow drifted irregularly, wind patterns shifted slightly, and the silence of the northern glaciers quivered. Though the frostbird moved with patience, adjusting its breath and wings to restore equilibrium, the echoes of mortal ambition were persistent. The northern lights shimmered faintly, reflecting the bird's concern, and the air grew sharper. A warning felt more than seen. Zapdos, ever vigilant within its storm, soared through clouds carrying faint hums of interference. Electricity flickered in ways it had not intended, small arcs of lightning cracking unpredictably. It knew the storm's balance was delicate. Even a minor disturbance could ripple outward, affecting frost and fire alike. The Thunderbird circled slowly, wings slicing through turbulent air, releasing controlled bursts of energy to maintain order, yet its eyes flickered with the knowledge that the calm might not last forever. Moltres, guardian of fire and renewal, stirred in response to these shifts. Its flames, once steady and patient, now flared in pulses that reflected both vigilance and unease. Lava streams shifted slightly beneath the mountains, warming areas unevenly, as if fire itself sensed the approaching tension. The Firebird stretched its wings, sending heat in gentle arcs across the landscape, a reminder to the world of the sustaining power of flame. But even it could not fully counteract the subtle unrest. Together, the three felt the first true signs of tension since the earliest days of creation. They had maintained harmony through quiet vigilance, but mortal desire, persistent and clever, had begun to test the boundaries of their balance. The mortals themselves remained unaware of the invisible forces they were influencing. They built towers to catch lightning, carved runes into glaciers, lit fires on volcanic peaks, and celebrated festivals of frost, storm, and flame. Every act of curiosity, every attempt to harness or summon, however small, echoed faintly through the world, carrying consequences the humans could not perceive. The legendary birds responded with subtlety. Articuno's wings beat slowly against the northern air, smoothing irregularities in frost. Zapdos guided storm currents away from populated lands, allowing rain and wind to flow in patterns that maintained stability. Moltres sent warmth into volcanic valleys, tempering unexpected flares and calming restless lava. Yet, despite their care, the shadows of discord deepened. Mortals began to spread, building settlements closer to the Guardians' domains. Some reached the high peaks. Some ventured into the storm clouds. Others mined near the volcanoes. The balance that had endured for centuries was now measured in whispers of tension, each subtle human action a faint echo traveling across the earth, through ice, through cloud, through fire. And beneath it all, the earth itself stirred. Tiny fissures appeared in mountains, small cracks formed in glaciers. The sky pulsed with faint, irregular currents of wind and electricity. These were signs, not of destruction, but of a world alert, a living system responding to the ambitions of its newest inhabitants. The three legendary birds, each aware of the unfolding tension, began to coordinate their watch more consciously. Though separated by domain, they could sense the rhythm of one another. Articuno's icy breath-cooled areas affected by Moltres' warmth. Zapdos tempered storms that would have spread frost too far south. Moltres adjusted the heat of the land to prevent destabilizing snowfalls. Each movement was deliberate, quiet, careful, preserving balance while acknowledging the presence of mortal curiosity. Even so, the shadows of discord persisted. Mortals, unaware, continued their experiments, rituals, and explorations. They sought knowledge of what they did not understand, touching the edges of elemental power. The world trembled subtly, not with disaster, but with anticipation, the tension that precedes great change. And so, the stage was set. Harmony had endured, yet now the first real test of vigilance approached. The whispers of ambition would continue, growing in strength over generations. Frost, storm, and fire would need to respond, not with immediate fury, but with enduring patience and quiet guidance. The three legendary birds circled silently in their respective domains, aware of one another, aware of the world, aware of the first shadows of discord that had begun to weave through the earth. They were guardians, patient and eternal, yet even eternity must bend to the weight of change. Above the high peaks, lightning traced soft arcs through gathering clouds. Snow drifted gently across frozen ridges, glimmering faintly in the glow of the setting sun. Lava rippled across volcanic valleys, its heat steady and alive. The world was calm, yet beneath the surface, the echoes of ambition and desire whispered through ice, storm, and flame. The harmony of the earth would be tested, and the guardians, eternal and vigilant, were ready. For even in shadows, balance waits. Even in quiet ambition, the world remembers. The world moved quietly under the watchful gaze of the three legendary birds. Frost traced the peaks of northern mountains, storms whispered across high skies, and fire glowed within the western volcanic heart. Harmony persisted, yet beneath the surface, subtle disturbances began to weave their threads. The shadows of discord had grown heavier, carried by mortal curiosity and ambition that reached beyond reverence into action. From the valleys and plains, humans ventured farther than before. They climbed higher, charted rivers, lit larger fires, and watched the skies more intently. Their songs carried not only thanks but questions, songs that hinted at the unseen and longed to command it. Each step, each ritual, each spark of curiosity added weight to the invisible balance the Guardians maintained. The world shivered faintly under this quiet pressure, aware that something larger, unseen, hovered just beyond its perception. Articuno, high upon the northern glaciers, sensed these stirrings most keenly. Snow fell unevenly, shifting in ways that hinted at disruption. Frost expanded and contracted with irregular rhythm. The icebird's wings beat slowly, deliberately, as it sought to calm the irregularities without forcing them. Its flight painted patterns in the snow, restoring order gently, as if tracing invisible threads that wove the world back into alignment. Yet even Articuno knew that subtle shifts can accumulate, and the tremors of ambition, however quiet, had weight. In the skies above Central Plains, Zapdos traced spirals of lightning and arcs of current, soft and precise, shaping the storm around areas of human expansion. Wind carried electricity in subtle pulses, warning yet nurturing, correcting yet permitting growth. Every motion was deliberate, every flash of light a reminder that the storm exists not to dominate, but to maintain balance. The air hummed faintly with tension, a signal of the Guardian's awareness of mortal ambition. Moltres, deep, within volcanic ridges, rose slowly. Flames licked the edges of the earth with gentle arcs, warming areas that frost sought to claim, tempering zones where storm currents could stir chaos. Its heat breathed life into dormant soil, revitalizing forests and rivers with measured care. Even fire, the most volatile of the three forces, acted in measured restraint, aware that unchecked intensity could destabilize the harmony it shared with frost and storm. The interplay between the three Guardians was subtle yet profound. From above, it appeared as isolated acts, snow drifting down a mountain, a spark of lightning over a river, embers spreading warmth in a valley. Yet beneath, these movements were entwined, like strands of an invisible web. Each action compensated for another, maintained a rhythm, and responded to the faint pulses of mortal activity that crept ever closer to the domains of the legendary birds. In remote villages and mountain settlements, humans began to notice the extraordinary. Lightning struck nearby, but without destruction. Fires flared yet offered only warmth. Snow fell to perfect depth without burdening their paths. Tales of unseen guardians spread through hushed whispers, encouraging both awe and curiosity. The world below felt the tension above, though its inhabitants lacked understanding of the precise forces at work. The tension of ambition grew alongside the rhythm of the elements. Travelers explored glaciers with reverent caution, venturing where ice shimmered unnaturally. Scholars charted storms that seemed alive, their direction and intensity controlled by some unseen hand. Miners and villagers approached volcanic slopes with offerings of fire and ash, hoping for favor, unaware that each act, however small, nudged the delicate balance of the Guardian's dominion. From high above, Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres sensed the subtle changes in one another. The frostbird felt warmth creeping too far into the north. The stormbird noticed air, currents bending around pockets of fire, and the flamebird detected frost lingering in valleys it had sought to warm. Their responses were silent, deliberate, a communication older than words. Through wind, snow, and heat, they shared knowledge of the tension gathering in the world below. The world itself seemed to wait, holding its breath in anticipation. Mountains exhaled slowly as rivers mirrored the sky. Forests rustled faintly in acknowledgement, and the air carried a charge that hinted at a coming moment, a time when harmony would need to assert itself more openly. Even the animals of the land moved with sensitivity to this invisible rhythm, instinctively cautious yet aware of the latent energy surrounding them. The mortals, growing bolder, prepared to test the edges of what they did not understand. They constructed instruments to measure storms, carved runes in ice, and lit fires on volcanic ridges. Each act, performed without malice, added weight to the silent tension. Though unaware, they were setting the stage for interaction with forces far beyond their comprehension. The legendary birds, patient and eternal, responded in kind. Articuno traced the ridges of northern mountains with careful sweeps of frost, ensuring that no imbalance became destructive. Zapdos directed winds and lightning currents across the central lands, dispersing energy evenly to prevent concentration that could threaten equilibrium. Moltres guided molten flows and rising embers, tempering the world with warmth without allowing flame to dominate. And in this careful choreography, the first true test of enduring balance emerged. The world held its breath, and the three guardians maintained the fragile harmony, a delicate dance of frost, storm, and fire. The rising tension from mortal ambition would not break the balance yet, but it demanded vigilance. Above the sleeping lands, the skies, the mountains, and the molten peaks shimmered faintly with awareness. The guardians moved, with purpose, subtlety, and patience, knowing that even the smallest misstep could ripple across time and space. Frost, storm, and fire intertwined, adjusting, compensating, guiding, a quiet, eternal ballet against the growing pull of curiosity and desire. The echoes of their vigilance resonated outward, felt not in noise, but in the rhythm of the earth itself. Rivers flowed in steadier currents. Winds softened over villages, and snow fell in patterns that cradled life rather than burdened it. Mortals sensed only the beauty of these subtle corrections, unaware of the unseen hands guiding their world. And so, beneath the silent gaze of the legendary birds, the tension continued to rise, slow, patient, unavoidable. It was a tension that carried possibility, danger, and wonder, all at once. The guardians, aware of each other and the unfolding challenges below, prepared for what would come next. For the world was alive. Forces of frost, storm, and fire watched, measured, and waited, and the first true trials of balance had begun. The world shifted subtly, almost imperceptibly, yet enough for those who moved with care to feel the change. Frost, storm, and fire flowed across the lands as they had for centuries, but the rising tension of mortal ambition carried faint vibrations that echoed through every peak, cloud, and volcanic ridge. It was the first time since their awakening that the legendary birds sensed the motion of one another not just in awareness, but in consequence. From the frozen north, Articuno drifted over glaciers and mountain ridges. Its wings extended wide, shaping the ice with careful, deliberate strokes. Snowflakes fell in spirals, tracing patterns that balanced the warmth encroaching from distant lands and the shifting energy of storms carried south by Zapdos. Its flight was a gentle pulse, a reminder that even in stillness there is movement, and even in patience there is power. Far to the east, Zapdos cut through turbulent clouds with precise arcs of golden lightning. Its wings spread wide, tracing currents in the sky with controlled energy. The Stormbird's charge was both protective and responsive, dispersing tension before it could gather into chaos. Yet it felt warmth stretching from the west, the silent influence of Moltres, and frost drifting northward, the reach of Articuno. Each current of electricity seemed to sense the presence of another, weaving together the invisible threads that bound their domains. Moltres rose above volcanic ridges, the heat from its wings warming the surrounding valleys. Flames trailed in quiet arcs, gentle yet persistent, touching the forests and rivers below with life-giving energy. The Firebird felt the reach of frost brushing the edges of its warmth, and the pulse of lightning dancing above its territory. The three were no longer acting in isolation. The rising tension of the world was drawing them into convergence, a subtle dance of cause and effect that echoed across the landscape. Mortals, unaware of the invisible threads that connected frost, storm, and fire, continued to press toward understanding. They ventured into northern passes, charted storm patterns in the central lands, and built fires atop volcanic ridges. Their presence carried weight, influencing the natural flow of the elements even when they moved with care and reverence. Each action was a ripple, small yet insistent, moving the guardians toward alignment, toward a convergence that was both inevitable and measured. The world itself seemed to respond. Clouds thickened in careful spirals, lightning crackled softly across the central plains, snow drifted in gentle waves across the north, and warmth shimmered along volcanic ridges. Rivers reflected the interplay of elements, flowing in patterns that traced the unseen paths of wings above. Every living creature, from the smallest insect to the largest predator, felt the subtle rhythm shifting beneath their feet, though none understood its source. Articuno, drifting above a glacial pass, sensed a faint current of heat brushing the snow, a whisper of Moltres' power stretching northward. With deliberate patience, the frostbird adjusted the movement of its wings, dispersing snow in patterns that softened the encroaching warmth while maintaining the flow of life below. Its eyes, calm and unblinking, reflected the distant shimmer of lightning in the skies to the south. A silent acknowledgement of Zapdos' presence. Zapdos, soaring above central plains where storm currents twisted and turned, traced arcs of energy in the sky with exquisite care. Lightning illuminated the clouds, not in fury, but in dialogue, responding to the faint pulses of heat and frost that stretched across the world. The stormbird's wings moved with precision, shaping the air so that tension dispersed evenly, maintaining a rhythm that both challenged and harmonized with the other guardians. Moltres, gliding above the volcanic heart, radiated warmth that flowed like a gentle tide across ridges and valleys. Flames arced through the air, illuminating the night with quiet brilliance. The firebird felt the cold push of frost reaching down from the north and the electric hum of storms crossing the plains. With careful control, it tempered its heat, allowing the energy of its wings to mingle with the currents around it without overwhelming them. For the first time, the three felt the presence of one another not only as distant guardians but as active participants in a shared rhythm. They moved as though drawn together by an invisible current, each action responding to another, each motion balancing the next. The convergence was subtle, imperceptible to mortal eyes, yet undeniable in its power. Below, the world adjusted to the invisible choreography above. Rivers twisted gently to accommodate new rainfall. Forests shifted in the breeze to match the balance of wind and heat, and snow softened against the warmth of distant sunlit peaks. Life responded, moving with care and precision in harmony with the unseen forces that now converged in the sky. The night deepened, and stars reflected faintly upon ice, water, and fire-lit clouds. The world seemed suspended in a delicate equilibrium, held in place by the awareness and patience of the three legendary birds. Each guardian moved deliberately, not with haste or desire, but with understanding of one another, of the world, and of the fragile tension that now threaded through existence. And yet, beneath this calm, the first subtle test of balance approached. Mortals would continue to push boundaries, unknowingly probing the limits of frost, storm, and fire. The convergence of the legendary birds was a promise of unity, but it was also a quiet warning. Harmony is fragile, and vigilance is eternal. Articuno shifted its wings once more, dispersing snow in measured spirals. Zapdos traced arcs of lightning that softened the clouds without tearing them apart. Moltres trailed embers that warmed valleys without overwhelming. The frost or storm currents. Each guardian's motion complemented the others, creating a slow, deliberate cadence that resonated across the earth. The first convergence was complete, not in spectacle, but in subtle harmony. Frost, storm, and fire moved as one, their presence felt in the rhythm of rivers, the drift of snow, the shimmer of lightning, and the warmth of fire. The world breathed with this newfound awareness, sensing both the guardians above and the rising ambition of the mortals below. And in that quiet, measured balance, a lesson endured. Even in the face of tension, even with shadows of discord gathering, harmony can prevail. The legendary birds, patient and eternal, had met, not in battle, not in dominance, but in the delicate, unspoken agreement of their ancient powers. The night passed quietly. Snow, lightning, and flame shimmered in concert across the lands. The world slept, yet beneath its calm surface, the first true interaction of frost, storm, and fire echoed, a promise of vigilance, unity, and the enduring presence of the legendary birds. The world had settled into quiet equilibrium after the first convergence of frost, storm, and fire. Articuno drifted above northern glaciers, Zapdos carved currents through the central skies, and Moltres radiated warmth from volcanic ridges. Their wings moved in measured harmony, each aware of the subtle threads connecting their domains. Yet even in calm, the faintest ripple could disrupt the balance, and curiosity, born in the hearts of mortals, began to stir. Across distant valleys and mountain passes, humans ventured with increasing boldness. They observed storms with careful instruments, charted ice formations in the north, and climbed volcanic slopes to trace the flow of molten rivers. Their movements were cautious, respectful, yet unavoidably persistent. Each act, no matter how small, reached upward into the world's delicate fabric, sending ripples that threaded invisibly through frost, storm, and fire. Articuno felt the first of these ripples. Snow fell unevenly across the northern ridges, small flurries drifting where they should not. The frostbird adjusted its wings in response, sweeping currents to restore natural flow while leaving patterns that mirrored the subtle pulse of life below. Even its patience was tested by these persistent intrusions. Frost and snow became the first line of dialogue between guardian and mortal, quiet and deliberate, almost imperceptible yet undeniably present. Zapdos traced arcs of electricity through clouds that hovered above plains and forests. Storm currents flickered against the subtle pressure of human observation, kites raised to measure wind, tall towers to capture lightning, travelers charting currents. Each probe created faint irregularities, and the stormbird's wings traced careful spirals to compensate. Lightning leapt and dissipated with precise grace, maintaining the harmony of the skies while acknowledging the curiosity beneath. Moltres radiated warmth across volcanic slopes and molten ridges. Fires flared and settled with intentional care, touching the edges of forests and valleys. Mortals lit ceremonial fires, building them higher, placing embers in patterns meant to honor or summon the flame bird. Moltres responded with quiet restraint, allowing light and warmth to touch the land without breaking the natural balance. Its wings moved slowly, arcs of flame tracing invisible threads that intertwined with frost and storm, maintaining a silent symphony. The ripples of curiosity were small but persistent, growing as generations passed. Mortals began to leave symbols and marks in places once untouched. They carved runes into glaciers, etched patterns into volcanic rock, and inscribed symbols into storm-tossed cliffs. These markings carried intention and desire, reaching not just into the land, but into the energies that flowed invisibly through it. The legendary birds responded with patience. Articuno softened frost to accommodate unexpected heat from Moltres, and guided snow patterns to harmonize with lightning currents shaped by Zapdos. Zapdos tempered wind and thunder to prevent disruption of fragile ice formations or uncontained flame. Moltres moved warmth through the land with deliberate arcs, balancing heat with cold and energy with stillness. Their movements were quiet, subtle, and profoundly effective. Yet the ripples continued, a reminder that curiosity cannot be contained indefinitely. The world responded to this interplay. Rivers adjusted to small shifts in flow, forests bent subtly to the direction of winds, and snow and embers alike found their paths altered by invisible hands. Every element became a participant in the dialogue between guardians and mortals, shaping and reshaping life with quiet intention. Mortals felt these changes as awe, not threat. They saw snow fall softly where none should have, lightning streak across clouds in unexpected arcs, and flames glow without consuming. They attributed these moments to divine protection or chance, unaware of the delicate adjustments that preserved balance. Their curiosity grew, encouraged by the wonder and subtle guidance of the elements. The three legendary birds sensed the rising tension with calm clarity. Ripples, though gentle, are persistent, and persistence can accumulate into waves. They recognize the need for vigilance without interference, guidance without dominance. Their wings moved in unison across the world, Articuno shaping frost, Zapdos steering storm, Moltres tending flame, each action harmonized with the others, maintaining equilibrium in the face of mortal exploration. And yet, even within this harmony, a quiet anticipation stirred. The curiosity of mortals hinted at challenges not yet realized, ambitions not yet revealed, desires that could stretch the threads of balance. Frost, storm, and fire remained patient, but the first signs of tension beyond their domains had begun. The world held its breath beneath the gentle arcs of snow, lightning, and flame. Rivers shimmered under starlight, forests whispered with the sway of unseen wings, and volcanic heat radiated softly through the quiet night. The ripples of curiosity spread outward, faint yet persistent, threading through the earth like subtle vibrations in a vast symphony. The legendary birds continued their watch, moving in patterns invisible to mortal eyes but resonant with the pulse of the world itself. Each ripple was met with careful adjustment, each question with measured guidance. Frost, storm, and fire, distinct yet intertwined, preserved harmony while allowing life to move and grow, learning, exploring, and reaching toward the unseen. And in this quiet vigilance, the first real test of the Guardian's patience began. Curiosity would persist, ambition would grow, but frost, storm, and fire remained eternal, moving as one across the land, through sky, and into the molten heart of the earth. The world slept beneath them, unaware yet profoundly touched by their presence. The ripples continued, soft and measured, shaping the story of balance that would endure for centuries to come. The world, long accustomed to the quiet vigilance of frost, storm, and fire, began to feel the first faint tremors of change. Mortals, guided by curiosity and ambition, had grown bolder. Their explorations reached higher into the mountains, farther into the plains, and deeper into volcanic valleys. Each step, each spark, each ritual carried weight that stretched across the natural currents of the world. The ripples of curiosity that had once been subtle now pressed with gentle insistence, nudging the invisible threads that connected frost, storm, and fire. Articuno, drifting across northern peaks, sensed these tremors first. Snow fell unevenly where it had once settled with precision. Glaciers shifted faintly, creaking against the slow passage of time. Even the northern lights, shimmering softly across the ice, seemed to pulse in response to the disturbance. The frostbird extended its wings, guiding snow and wind with deliberate patience, yet even its careful motions could not fully erase the marks of human intrusion. Frost and ice quivered faintly, whispering of a world that was both resilient and delicate. Zapdos, soaring high through storm-laden skies, felt the tremors in the currents it commanded. Lightning flickered with unexpected arcs, clouds twisted against their natural flow, and the air hummed with the subtle tension of ambition reaching upward. The stormbird traced its wings through turbulent winds, shaping them into spirals that carried energy gently across the land. Each arc of electricity was precise, deliberate, a response to disturbances that threatened to accumulate into chaos. Yet even Zapdos felt the weight of persistence, the quiet insistence of mortal hands reaching toward forces beyond their understanding. Moltres, rising from the molten heart of western volcanoes, sensed uneven pulses within the earth itself. Lava flowed differently in places where it had once moved predictably. Fissures opened faintly in anticipation, and the warmth of the firebird's wings met pockets of cold that pressed upward from Articuno's northern reach. Moltres traced arcs of flame through the night, tempering the earth without suppressing it, allowing energy to flow while maintaining delicate balance. Its heat touched forests and rivers, guiding life with measured care. Together, the three legendary birds felt the tremors not as isolated events, but as connected threads. The ripples of curiosity from mortals were growing, accumulating energy that subtly strained the harmony they had so carefully maintained. Frost reached into storm currents, storm brushed against fire, and fire pressed into frost. Their actions were deliberate, interwoven, yet they sensed the first signs that these threads could unravel, if not carefully tended. Below, the world responded to these subtle shifts. Rivers changed their course ever so slightly. Forests bent more noticeably to the wind, and volcanic ridges glimmered with uneven heat. Even the smallest creatures adjusted instinctively, sensing the rhythm of energy that now pulsed with increased irregularity. Mortals, unaware of the exact forces at play, felt only the wonder and subtle power of the world around them. They continued to climb peaks, light ceremonial fires, and study storms, their actions growing bolder with each passing season. Articuno's breath of frost moved with renewed focus, softening ice in precise patterns and redirecting snow to stabilize shifts. Zapdos directed wind and lightning across the plains, dispersing concentrated energy to maintain rhythm. Moltres guided heat and flame along valleys and mountains, ensuring warmth spread evenly without overwhelming other elements. Each guardian's motion responded to both mortal action and the subtle movements of the others, a silent dance that shaped the fabric of the world. Yet, the tremors were persistent. Snow fell in unexpected drifts. Storms carried currents that bent unnaturally, and flames glimmered in ways that hinted at instability. The world's rhythm, though intact, began to quiver under the quiet pressure of ambition. Frost, storm, and fire moved with careful patience, their interactions more deliberate than ever, countering disturbances while maintaining the flow of life below. The mortals, sensing only the beauty and power around them, continued to probe the boundaries of the natural world. They built towers to measure storms, carved deeper into glaciers, and ventured farther into volcanic landscapes. Each act, while small and unintentional in its consequence, carried the weight of accumulated curiosity. The world responded in faint tremors, shifts in wind, irregularities in snow, pulses of heat, subtle but undeniable signs that balance was being tested. The legendary birds understood the delicate threshold they now faced. The tremors were not destruction, nor were they failure. They were warning. Balance is not static, and the harmony they had nurtured required vigilance, adjustment, and awareness. Frost, storm, and fire moved with deliberate care, weaving an intricate pattern across mountains, valleys, rivers, and skies, ensuring that even the persistent pressure of mortal ambition would not unravel the fragile equilibrium. Night fell across the lands, soft and profound. Rivers shimmered under the reflection of distant lightning. Snow drifted gently over peaks, and embers glowed faintly across volcanic ridges. The tremors of disturbance lingered, subtle yet insistent, threading through the world like faint vibrations in a living web. Frost, storm, and fire remained vigilant, each aware of the other, each shaping the world with measured motion. The first tremors of true consequence had arrived. The harmony of the earth was intact, yet stretched thin by curiosity and ambition. The legendary birds, eternal and patient, watched, adjusted, and waited, knowing that the ripples of mortals could soon become waves. And so, beneath the quiet night, the world held its breath. The tremors of disturbance pulsed faintly through ice, storm, and flame, and the guardians continued their watch, silent, eternal, and profoundly aware. The world stirred beneath the vigilant wings of frost, storm, and fire. The tremors of disturbance that had begun as subtle ripples now carried more force, fed by mortal curiosity, pressing against boundaries once left untouched. Rivers shifted with faint irregularity. Snow fell in patterns that defied expectation, and the heat of volcanoes quivered beneath the Earth's surface. These changes were not catastrophic, yet they marked the first moments when the harmony the legendary birds maintained faced tangible strain. Articuno, drifting above northern peaks, felt the currents of challenge in the shifting snow and ice. Glaciers creaked faintly, responding to the pressure of human exploration, and wind currents carried heat northward in whispers from distant lands. The frostbird extended its wings with deliberate care, directing snow and ice to restore equilibrium. Each motion was slow and purposeful, a dance of patience that countered disturbance without overwhelming the natural order. The challenge was subtle yet persistent, demanding attention that stretched beyond the simple act of observation. In the central skies, Zapdos traced arcs of lightning that shimmered against clouds thickened by human observation and construction. Towers built to capture lightning altered the natural flow of air, guiding electric currents into new, unpredictable paths. The stormbird moved with precision, steering currents in spirals that balanced energy across valleys and plains. It did not act with fury, for force would have disrupted harmony, but with care, ensuring the storm shaped life rather than threatening it. Moltres rose from the volcanic heart, its flames trailing like liquid gold across molten ridges. Lava flowed with slight irregularity, and small fissures appeared where human activity had drawn too close to the Earth's pulse. The firebird moved deliberately, arcs of warmth radiating across valleys and forests, softening the sudden intrusion of cold from Articuno's reach and dispersing the storm's energy from Zapdos. Its motion was measured, aware that every pulse of fire, every shimmer of embers, must harmonize with frost and storm alike. The three legendary birds, though distant, were united in awareness. The currents of challenge flowing from mortal ambition intertwined with one another, forming a delicate network that stretched across mountains, rivers, and skies. Frost reached into storm, storm brushed against fire, and fire pressed into frost. Each guardian responded, a silent conversation through wings, feathers, and energy, weaving a symphony of subtle yet profound adjustments. Below, mortals continued their exploration. Climbers ascended icy peaks with careful precision, scholars charted storm patterns with meticulous instruments, and communities lit ceremonial fires across volcanic ridges. Each act, though guided by reverence or curiosity, sent faint waves of influence upward into the sky, reaching into the domains of the guardians. The world adjusted in turn. Rivers flowed with slight variations, forests bent in response to shifting winds, and volcanic ridges shimmered with measured heat. Life itself moved with a quiet awareness of the invisible currents shaping their world. The currents of challenge tested more than just the physical elements. They pressed against the patience and wisdom of the guardians themselves. Articuno's wings carved more precise arcs through northern winds, refining frost patterns to counter unpredictable warmth. Zapdos spiraled through storm clouds with heightened focus, balancing lightning and air with meticulous care. Moltres adjusted every pulse of heat and flame to guide the molten earth, tempering fire with restraint and grace. Together, their movements were a delicate ballet, subtle yet immensely powerful, maintaining equilibrium in the face of mounting pressure. Night deepened, casting long shadows across snow, storm, and fire. Stars reflected faintly upon glaciers, rivers, and lava flows, shimmering as though aware of the currents of challenge threading through the world. The tremors from mortal ambition persisted, gentle yet insistent, carrying energy that could tip balance if left unchecked. Yet the legendary birds responded with patience, precision, and subtle authority, each movement a testament to eternal vigilance. The world below felt the guidance of these invisible currents, without knowing it. Rivers traced smoother arcs, snowflakes drifted in perfect spirals, lightning shimmered across clouds without harm, and embers warmed the earth without consuming it. Mortals sensed only the beauty and subtle power of the natural world, unaware that each act of curiosity nudged the delicate framework of harmony maintained by frost, storm, and fire. The currents of challenge would not relent. Ambition and exploration pressed steadily forward, growing stronger with each passing day. Yet the guardians endured, moving as one across their domains, adjusting the world in gentle, deliberate motions. Frost tempered fire, storm redirected the flow of air, fire balanced the cold. Each act, imperceptible to mortal eyes, reinforced the fragile network of balance threading through the earth. And so, the first true confrontation between mortal ambition and the guardian's eternal vigilance unfolded, not in noise or destruction, but in a quiet, measured dance. Frost, storm, and fire remained patient, aware, and profoundly deliberate, sustaining harmony while responding to the persistent push of curiosity that reached into their world. The night passed with gentle reverence. Snow shimmered across peaks, lightning traced arcs through clouds without fury, and embers glowed softly across molten ridges. Life moved with careful attention, guided by invisible wings. And above it all, the legendary birds maintained their eternal watch, ready to respond to every ripple, every current, every challenge that flowed across their domains. Balance had been tested, yet it endured. The currents of challenge moved quietly, persistent yet restrained. And frost, storm, and fire continued their silent guardianship, eternal and vigilant. The world had grown accustomed to the quiet presence of frost, storm, and fire. Rivers flowed in deliberate arcs. Snow fell in precise spirals. Lightning traced graceful paths through the skies. And molten ridges glowed with steady warmth. Yet beneath this tranquility, the threads of influence stretched further than ever, responding not only to the eternal guardians above, but to the persistent curiosity and ambition of mortals below. Articuno drifted high above the northern glaciers, wings spread wide, shaping frost with slow, deliberate motions. Snowflakes traced arcs in the air, drifting into valleys, gathering in folds, or dispersing over peaks as needed. Each movement was a message, a quiet correction of imbalance, a gentle reinforcement of rhythm. Yet the frostbird's awareness extended beyond its domain. Currents of warmth from the south whispered faintly against the cold, and distant arcs of lightning shimmered with subtle energy. Articuno adjusted its wings in response, weaving ice with consideration for both storm and fire, shaping the world not in isolation, but as part of a greater, interconnected harmony. Zapdos spiraled through the central skies, arcs of electricity tracing spirals that danced across clouds. Each bolt of lightning was controlled, precise, dispersing energy without harm, responding to both natural currents and the subtle influence of mortal activity. Towers and instruments built by humans shifted the paths of air and electricity, sending currents that the stormbird guided with care. Zapdos's wings carved spirals that intertwined with the patterns of frost drifting northward and the warmth reaching upward from Moltres, creating a symphony of invisible influence that touched the world below. Moltres rose from the molten heart of the western volcanoes, trailing arcs of flame that shimmered like liquid gold. Lava flowed in deliberate paths, warming valleys, rivers, and forests, yet never overwhelming the cold or the storm. Mortals lit fires and ceremonial patterns, exploring volcanic ridges and collecting embers with reverent hands. Each ember carried intention, and each act of observation sent energy rippling upward. Moltres' wings responded in kind, tracing arcs of heat that merged with frost and storm, ensuring balance while allowing the mortal world to move and learn. The threads of influence were subtle yet profound. Every action of a mortal, whether climbing a glacier, observing a storm, or lighting a ceremonial flame, reverberated through the elements. Frost, storm, and fire responded not with dominance, but with adjustment, a patient guidance that maintained harmony while respecting life and curiosity. Rivers shifted slightly to accommodate rainfall, influenced by distant storms. Snow softened in valleys touched by warmth. Lightning spread through clouds with delicate arcs that avoided disruption. Fire tempered cold while nurturing forests and fertile soil. The interplay of these threads shaped the world in ways both invisible and palpable. Mountains seemed steadier, peaks sharper, and ridges more defined. Valleys glimmered with water that moved more gracefully, reflecting the sky above. Forests swayed gently with the rhythm of wind and warmth, and the creatures inhabiting these lands moved with careful attention to currents of air, snow, and flame. Every motion, every ripple, became part of a complex web of influence connecting mortals, elements, and guardians. Articuno sensed the growing complexity of this web. The frostbird moved with deliberate grace, adjusting snow and ice with precision to respond to unexpected warmth or electrical currents. Its awareness extended into patterns far beyond immediate glaciers, touching distant valleys where mortals were learning, exploring, and influencing the flow of life. Even small acts, footprints, fires, or tools left on snow-covered peaks echoed into the delicate network, shaping frost in quiet response. Zapdos traced currents with equal daughters. Care, dispersing energy from storms that twisted under the pressure of human observation. Every lightning arc, every spiral of wind, became part of a dialogue between mortal curiosity and elemental balance. The Stormbird moved not to dominate, but to guide, ensuring that the threads of influence strengthened harmony rather than unraveling it. Moltres, sensing both the northward drift of frost and the energetic arcs of the storm, shaped heat with patience and restraint. Flames trailed across ridges, touched volcanic valleys, and warmed forests without dominance, blending with frost and storm to maintain the subtle web connecting the world. Every ember carried intention, every pulse of warmth a response to distant movements. Together, the three legendary birds orchestrated this silent symphony of influence. They were aware of the mortal threads stretching upward, shaping curiosity and ambition into patterns that could either strengthen balance or strain it. Their wings moved in response to each ripple, each pulse, each disturbance, preserving harmony while nurturing life. Frost, storm, and fire intertwined, creating a tapestry of energy, rhythm, and quiet authority that stretched across mountains, rivers, and skies. Mortals, unaware of the intricate web connecting their actions to the guardians, felt only beauty and subtle guidance. Snow fell to cushion footsteps, lightning traced arcs that inspired awe, and embers glowed with warmth that seemed to know precisely where it was needed. Their curiosity was nurtured, not suppressed, and the world responded with quiet generosity. The threads of influence extended farther than mortals could perceive. Rivers carried the reflection of storms above and warmth from molten flows below. Forests bent to the rhythm of wind, frost, and flame. Mountains shimmered under moonlight as ice, storm, and heat combined to guide each contour with care. Life, from the smallest insect to the largest predator, moved with awareness of forces unseen but deeply felt. And through it all, the legendary birds maintained their eternal watch. Frost, storm, and fire, each distinct yet intertwined, shaped the world with patient precision. The mortal world explored, learned, and reached, while the guardians adjusted, guided, and harmonized. In the quiet night, the threads of influence pulsed through the land. Snow drifted in gentle arcs, lightning shimmered softly across clouds, and flames glowed with measured warmth. The world breathed in rhythm, with the wings above, carrying the subtle lesson that even curiosity and ambition, when guided by patience and awareness, can become part of harmony rather than disruption. And so, beneath stars that reflected across ice, water, and flame, frost, storm, and fire moved as one, shaping the world, guiding life, and weaving threads of influence that would endure for generations to come. Time passed, slow and deliberate, across the lands of frost, storm, and fire. Rivers traced their courses with gentle persistence. Glaciers shifted imperceptibly. Storms arced across skies in delicate spirals, and volcanic heat glimmered softly along molten ridges. Yet beneath this surface of calm, the cumulative effects of mortal ambition began to stir a quiet reckoning, subtle yet unmistakable. Articuno drifted above northern glaciers, wings stretched wide, shaping snow and frost in measured arcs. The glaciers bore the marks of human passage, paths carved into ice, symbols etched in frozen cliffs, and small settlements pressed further into previously untouched heights. Though their presence was respectful, it exerted a faint pressure upon the frost, causing delicate patterns to falter. Articuno moved deliberately, sweeping wings through the air to restore balance, yet even the frostbird felt the weight of persistence. The glaciers whispered, creaking faintly, signaling that the time for mere guidance was drawing close. Zapdos soared through storm-laden skies above the plains, arcs of lightning tracing deliberate spirals as the stormbird sensed currents tugged by mortal constructions. Towers and instruments altered the flow of air, sending energy into paths the storm had not intended. The lightning flickered, subtle yet insistent, a reminder that even gentle disturbances can accumulate. Zapdos traced wings in careful loops, dispersing tension and guiding energy across the land, responding not just to mortal influence, but to the shifting pulse of frost and fire, reaching into its skies. Moltres rose from volcanic ridges, flames trailing in soft arcs, sensing the subtle tremors in the molten earth. Lava flows rippled differently where human exploration pressed too close. Fissures whispered faintly beneath the surface, and fires, ceremonial and natural, sent currents of heat stretching further than intended. Moltres extended wings, guiding warmth across valleys and forests, balancing fire against frost and storm. Its presence was measured yet firm, a reminder that even gentle curiosity carries consequence. The quiet reckoning was not violent, but it was insistent. Ripples of human ambition, once small and respectful, had accumulated into currents capable of reshaping localized patterns in frost, storm, and fire. The world responded with faint tremors. Rivers curved slightly differently. Glaciers shifted with measured pressure. Clouds twisted unpredictably, and lava glimmered along new, unseen channels. Each subtle shift was both a signal and a reminder that the Guardian's vigilance, though eternal, must now move beyond observation and subtle guidance. Articuno traced the northern winds, softening frost that bent under pressure, stabilizing glaciers that trembled from cumulative impact, and guiding snow in spirals that restored the balance without erasing the mark of human passage. Every motion was deliberate, a silent assertion of authority carried with patient grace. Zapdos spiraled through storm clouds, steering arcs of lightning along precise paths, dispersing energy that threatened to concentrate and disrupt, guiding gusts of wind to redirect currents without force, responding to both frost and fire in a silent conversation that spanned the expanse of sky and land. Moltres radiated heat that flowed in controlled arcs across ridges and valleys, tempering cold from the north and dispersing storm energy, allowing fire to nurture the world without consuming it. Its wings moved slowly, deliberately, a measured balance of power and restraint, shaping life through warmth while respecting the other elements. Mortals, sensing only the beauty and subtle guidance of their world, remained unaware of the quiet reckoning unfolding above them. Snow drifted to soften their paths, lightning arced in mesmerizing patterns, and flames glowed with warmth that seemed to understand precisely where it was needed. Their curiosity pressed onward, yet it was tempered by the unseen presence of the legendary birds who adjusted the world with patient vigilance. The quiet reckoning was a lesson, subtle yet profound. It reminded the world that curiosity carries weight, that ambition requires awareness, and that harmony exists not by ignoring influence, but by shaping it with care. Frost, storm, and fire intertwined more closely than ever, their wings moving in a deliberate symphony that preserved balance while accommodating the persistent push of mortal exploration. Rivers shimmered under starlight, reflecting lightning arcs from distant storms. Glaciers shifted gently under moonlight, echoing the careful motion of frost. Volcanic ridges glowed with embers softened by deliberate warmth. The world moved as a living entity, guided by invisible hands, harmonized by the patient vigilance of the legendary birds. And in this calm yet firm assertion, the quiet reckoning found its voice. Mortals would continue to explore, to learn, and to reach toward the elements. Yet every ripple they created was met with measured guidance, every disturbance absorbed and harmonized, every pulse of curiosity woven into the eternal balance maintained by frost, storm, and fire. Night deepened, carrying with it the slow rhythm of wings across the land. Snow fell in gentle spirals, lightning shimmered in arcs that reflected across rivers and clouds, and embers glowed softly over molten ridges. Life moved with awareness of currents both seen and unseen, guided by forces eternal and patient. The quiet reckoning had arrived, not as fury, but as presence, deliberate, observant, and profoundly aware. Frost, storm, and fire had spoken without sound, shaping the world, guiding life, and ensuring that even in the face of persistent curiosity, harmony endured, balance remained, vigilance persisted, and the legendary birds continued their eternal watch, patient, deliberate, and unyielding in their guardianship. The world had endured, shaped by the wings of frost, storm, and fire. Rivers wound gracefully through valleys. Glaciers rested in quiet majesty. Clouds shimmered with arcs of lightning, and volcanic ridges glowed with patient warmth. The cumulative ripple of mortal curiosity, once a gentle disturbance, had been met with vigilant guidance, each pulse of ambition harmonized by the eternal guardians. And now, in the quiet aftermath of countless adjustments, a profound sense of equilibrium had settled over the lands. Articuno drifted above northern peaks, wings extended with deliberate grace. Snow fell in measured spirals, glinting softly in the light of distant stars. The frostbird moved with patient authority, shaping ice and wind to maintain balance, tracing arcs that echoed across glaciers and frozen valleys. Mortals had left their marks, carved symbols, footprints, and paths, yet every trace was absorbed into the harmony of the land, integrated without disruption. The northern lights shimmered faintly, a celestial acknowledgement of the frostbird's enduring presence and watchful care. Zapdos soared through storm-laden skies, arcs of electricity painting soft spirals across clouds. Wind currents moved in deliberate flow, dispersing energy evenly across plains, forests, and distant mountains. Lightning flickered not with chaos but with gentle rhythm, illuminating the world below with quiet brilliance. Towers, instruments, and observant humans remained, yet the stormbird's precise guidance ensured that every gust of wind, every pulse of electricity, contributed to harmony rather than disruption. Its wings traced invisible threads, connecting storms, frost, and fire in a symphony of measured control. Moltres rose from volcanic ridges, flames trailing like molten gold across valleys and ridges. Lava flowed in gentle currents, warming forests, rivers, and settlements without overwhelming them. Ceremonial fires, sparked by curious hands, glimmered with life-giving warmth, their energy seamlessly integrated into the Guardian's eternal design. Moltres' wings moved in deliberate arcs, harmonizing heat with frost and storm, ensuring that life thrived within the embrace of fire without disturbance or imbalance. The three legendary birds, distinct yet intertwined, moved as one across the world. Their wings traced arcs and spirals in air, ice, and fire, weaving a tapestry of subtle power and patient authority. Mortals, moving below, continued their exploration and learning, unaware of the precise adjustments above. And yet, their curiosity, ambition, and reverence had become part of the enduring harmony, threaded gently into the eternal dance of frost, storm, and fire. The world itself responded with quiet grace. Rivers shimmered under moonlight, reflecting lightning arcs and embers in gentle reflection. Forests swayed in rhythm with wind, frost, and warmth, their leaves and branches guided by invisible currents. Snow softened over mountain passes, trails, and valleys, while volcanic heat nourished forests and fertile soil. Every living creature moved with subtle awareness of the Guardian's influence, a silent recognition of forces eternal and protective. Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres maintained balance, not through dominance, but through patient guidance, responding to disturbance with care and precision. Frost, storm, and fire had become threads in a vast tapestry, each distinct yet harmonized, shaping the world and guiding life through invisible hands. The mortal world, though unaware of every correction, moved in concert with these threads, participating in the eternal harmony through observation, curiosity, and careful action. The night deepened, carrying with it a sense of serenity that stretched across ice, cloud, and molten ridge. Stars reflected softly across glaciers, rivers, and fiery peaks, as if acknowledging the Guardian's quiet orchestration. The world breathed in rhythm with the movements. Above, flowing in gentle arcs, shaped by wings that had existed since the dawn of legend. And in this eternal moment, the harmony became absolute. Mortals learned to coexist within the rhythms of frost, storm, and fire, their curiosity tempered by the gentle guidance of forces far greater than themselves. The legendary birds, patient and eternal, continued their watch, their wings tracing arcs across the heavens and the earth. Balance persisted, vigilance endured. The world was at peace. Yet beneath the surface of snow, cloud, and flame, the subtle pulse of life and energy continued, alive and unbroken. Frost, storm, and fire remained, eternal in their guardianship, shaping the world with deliberate patience, nurturing life, and maintaining the delicate harmony that had endured through centuries. The mortal world slept beneath their watchful wings, cradled by snow, storm, and warmth. Rivers whispered their gratitude. Mountains shimmered in quiet reflection. Forests breathed softly, and volcanic ridges glowed with gentle life. Harmony was eternal. Balance was unbroken. And the legendary birds, guardians of frost, storm, and fire, continued their vigil, eternal, vigilant, and profoundly present. The world moved forward, alive and rhythm with wings that had carried legend for countless ages. And so, in the quiet stillness of night, frost, storm, and fire remained. Eternal harmony, eternal guardianship, and the eternal heartbeat of a world both observed and nurtured.